for a long, long time. Some of you may know Dick Dennis. We always say in the nature business, everybody knows Dick Dennis. You know, talk around enough and you'll find somebody who knows Dick Dennis, my husband, because he's out here all the time. I am president of the Beck and Bird Club this year. That was because they couldn't get anybody else who was good enough to take it, of course. I volunteer at a Creasy Mayhem Nature Reserve out in Oldham County, and we're getting ready to have our big flower walk next weekend. Tabby's going to lead flower walks, so that'll be really cool. I spend most of my time volunteering at Raptor Rehab these days. Okay, cleaning poopy bird cages, taking birds to schools to show kids. It is the thrill of my life. Except for the poopy bird cage. But taking the birds to schools to show kids, that's the thrill of my life. Okay? Like I said, cleaning poopy bird cages is just a perk. So, there we go. I've been birding since about 2006. Sometimes people say, how did you get into this? And our story is kind of funny. We had to think to figure out what it was. When we went to Florida in 2006, I don't know why, we took along an old pair of binoculars. Okay? And we saw sandhill cranes nesting in our condo unit. We went to, here's the thing that got us, Merritt Island. You ever been to Merritt Island at Cape Canaveral? Cape Kennedy, whatever? It is a National Wildlife Refuge. And you just drive through it and the birds are all right there. You don't even need binoculars to see these wonderful, fabulous birds. And we got hooked. So we've been going to birding festivals around the country and birding here and joining the bird club and just, you know, anytime we can do it, that's our vacation. We go birding, you know. And it's wonderful because it gives us, you know, in our retirement, it gives us things that we like to do together. And that's important when you retire, husband and wife retire. You know, instead of going this way, you like to do things together. I did my CIG training in this very room with Ren. What's it been? It's been about 5 years ago. I had to renew this year, last year, whatever. So I'm always glad to come back and see your smiling faces. Now, who have we got in here who considers himself to be a birder already? You don't have to be shy. Stick it up there. I'm birding and I'm proud of it. Okay, that's good. You think you're a beginning birder or an intermediate birder? Beginning birder, okay. How many of you don't even know what a bird is? Okay, good. We got one. Admitting your problem is the first thing on your road to recovery. Okay, so that's okay. We're going to go all through this. Okay, see if I can get my little button to go. Come on, move. The antenna's on the other side. Let's change it. Because I want to stand over here. It's more room for my coffee. Right? Come on, go. Okay, all right. So in beginning birdings, you know, the thing we all want to learn is, well, how do you identify the bird? So we're going to look at some things that you need to pay attention to help you identify a bird when you find it. But the problem is you have to know where to go to find the birds. You know, that's the first thing. You can have all these wonderful skills, and if there's no birds, then, you know, you're out of luck. So you have to go where the birds are. What gear do you need to use? Okay. Field guides. We'll talk about some of the field guides. I brought some. I know Ren's got some more upstairs if we need them. Is that it? Okay. And after that first part, after the field guides, I've got kind of a break built into this. Because the first part will all be just talking and things like that. And then after the break, we can choose. Okay? We can either take what we've got and go outside, or my second part is I've got some slides of birds that you might see here at Bernheim. So you can actually see them, guaranteed, here. And I've got calls for a lot of them because I rely a lot on bird song. Okay? And then after we do that, we could go outside for a little while. I know you said we're supposed to be done at 10? 10:30? Okay, that's better. I thought it was 10 o'clock. Oh, gee, I can't get all this in an hour and a half. Okay, so we'll take a break there before we start looking at the pictures of the birds. Or at that time, if you said, yeah, enough sitting in a room, let's go outside, we can do that and just take our chances on what we're going to find. Okay, so we'll talk about that when we get back from break. and some internet resources. That's the wonderful thing that we have as birders now that they didn't used to have, 25, 30 years ago. All these wonderful resources. So we'll look at some of those. All right, so yes.
Kathy Hiddes is one of them. She's going to be very modest, but her blogging, reading the blog spot is awesome.
Okay. So the first thing we want to know is, we all know birds have feathers and wings, right? Some of them are great big, some of them are little bitty. I just heard a speaker, Thor Hansen, wrote a book about the evolution of feathers, and it was fascinating. Birds are the only creatures on the earth that have feathers. Other creatures fly. Other creatures do all the things that birds do, but only birds have feathers. So it's cool. So one of the things we're going to be looking at when we're out birding is the size and the shape of the bird. Okay, size is a very difficult thing to get your hands around lots of times. Okay, color patterns. And we're going to find out, is that a really reliable way? Sometimes it's a reliable identifier. Sometimes it's a little trickier. Behavior. Yeah, behavior can do it right off the bat for some birds. Their habitat. Because just because you see a wren, you can tell what kind of wren it might be simply by the habitat that it's in. Field marks, that's always been the oh my God, I can't learn the field marks. But I'm going to show you how you can. Okay? Songs and calls. I rely on songs and calls because that's how I find where the bird is to go look for it. I hear it first. And lots of times I've learned enough calls that I was just walking up from the parking lot and I said, oh, we've got a toady here. Darn, I didn't put a picture of a toady. We've got a meadowlark and darn, I didn't put a picture of a meadowlark. Okay? So to me, that's a very valuable thing, is to learn the songs.
What do you mean by field marks?
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Okay? We'll get to that. Okay, so first of all, size and shape. You read in the field guide and it said, oh, this bird is 4.5 inches long. This bird is 24 inches. And you say, wow. Size is very, very difficult to gauge, okay, when you're down there and it's up there. Okay, so we often look at body shape, silhouettes. Now think about it. Lots of times when we're out birding, it's not a day like today where the sun is shining nicely. It's cloudy. The weather is nasty. Or even on a sunny day, the sun is behind the birds, they're backlit, and all you see is a silhouette. So learning these shapes of the birds, their silhouettes, can be a very, very valuable thing. You get a feel for the proportions of the head, the wings, the legs, the tails. I can tell a Cooper's hawk because it's got a longer tail than any other hawk there is. Okay? So knowing those shapes, how long the bill is, what shape, is it a little skinny, pointy bill? Is it a big, thick bill? Okay? So that you can tell, well, is it a sparrow or is it a finch? Just by the shape of the bill. Okay? So that's what I say. You see a bird, you look at that and you say, oh, it's got a big fat bill. It must be some kind of a finch and not a sparrow, not something else. Okay? So often you use these shapes, these silhouettes, to get yourself, oh, I think it's this kind of bird. Okay? Start with that. The wing shape in flight can be very distinctive. Let's look at some examples. Okay? You all, even if you don't think you're birders, you all know more about birds than you think you do. Okay? So, for example, if I pointed to, let's see, this bird right here, kingfisher. Why do you know that? He's got that little double crest. Why else? He's sitting on this limb right above the water, and we know that's water down there because there's a duck on it. Okay? So we can tell these by just the shapes. This one, what do you think? Nope. That one's more likely a meadowlark. Meadowlark. It's got a little short tail, got its head thrown back singing. Let's see, where is, how about this guy? Yeah, that's our crow. That's our crow. He's big. He's bulky. Okay, we can tell that's the crow. Let's see, this one.
Woodpecker.
Woodpecker, yeah, he's climbing up the side of a tree. There are other birds that climb up sides of trees, but a woodpecker is always a good guess to start with when you see one like that. This guy?
Cardinal.
Yeah, he's got that top knot, okay? He's got that crest up here, that top knot, so we can tell that. Can you see, you guys over there may not be able to see this little one. How about this little guy right here? A red, why? Because his tail stands straight up. Okay? So even though you can't see anything but their silhouette, there's a lot of birds you recognize just by, oh, how about this one? Mourning dove. Yeah, why? Because he's got that pointy tail. Okay? So, like I said, you already know more than you think you do. So silhouettes are very, very important because lots of times that's all you're going to see of the bird is just the shape of it. Okay? So if nothing else, it gives you a start. Silhouettes, again, the head on. When birds are flying, silhouettes all you're going to see. They're moving too fast. Okay? The light's behind them. Here's one of the big things that we'll get any place in Kentucky is this guy right here. Turkey vulture. Turkey vultures fly with their wings in a V. Okay? So if you see one there, I think it's a vulture, but he's doing this. It might be a black vulture. Okay? They're cousins that fly with their wings flat. Okay? If you see them in a silhouette instead of a head-on, this black vulture looks like he doesn't have a tail. Looks like his wings are set way back on his butt, and he's got such a short tail it looks like he doesn't have one in a silhouette. Okay? Or, you always hope that the bald eagle, because they do like this, and the thing is, again, looking at size, well, if that bald eagle is way up there, you're going to have a hard time telling how big it really is simply because of the distance. Okay? Harriers, a kind of hawk. You don't see them as often around here, okay? But they also fly in a dihedral. Okay? So the head-on patterns of them. Oops, wrong button. In birding, we call it the, is that the right one? I thought I had one more before that. Head-on pattern. Okay. In birding, we call it the jizz. Some people spell it J-I-Z-Z, just pronounce it jizz. General impression of shape and size. Because lots of times, it's what catches your eye. These birds are on the move. They're hiding. They don't really want to be seen by you, and it's often rare if you can get them to come out and pose. Okay? So you're going for that instantaneous general impression. And a beginning bird says, oh, gee, I can't learn to do that. With practice and time, you can. Okay? Believe you can. I've learned to do it sometimes, so it can be done. What catches your eye first? Are you looking at the shape of the bill? Okay? One of you was looking at, had a question about white pelicans. Okay? You got that big pelican bill, it's not going to be anything else but a pelican. Okay? A raptor with the sharp hooked bill. Okay? You're not going to mistake that raptor beak for anything else. The shape of their wings. Are they long and pointed? Ooh, it might be a falcon. Okay? Are they rounded? Red-tailed hawks will have more rounded wings. So you look at the shape of their wings. Any distinguishing marks, that crest. We knew the kingfisher and the cardinal just by the top of their head. Okay, so those kind of distinguishing marks are real good. The shape of the tail, is it short, is it long, is it square, is it forked, is it rounded, whatever. Okay, so all of those things go into that instantaneous, that really quick, oh, I think it's a what? Okay, wing bars or wing patches. You can always tell a northern mockingbird because when it flies, it's got these beautiful white patches on its wings and white bars on its tail. You don't have to hear it say anything. If it flies, you know it's a northern mockingbird. Guess. it looks like a duck, it's some kind of duck. Okay, now this winter I found that there are lots of duck-like birds. You can always say, it's a duck-like bird, okay? It's a hawk-like bird. I've learned to do that instead of stepping out and guessing and being wrong in front of all my expert friends. I'll say, it's a duck-like bird, and then I'll take a picture of it and send it to somebody who knows. Okay? Colors. Now here's why I say, look at colors, but don't rely on colors alone for ID. Because when my husband and I were down at Merritt Island, and we saw a bird with a dark head, it was a duck-like bird with a black head. And we go through that field guide, and there aren't any duck-like birds with black heads, we can't find them. And then one of them turned around the other way. The sun hit it different, and all of a sudden it wasn't a black head, it was a green head. Okay? And that's when I learned not to trust what my eye sees as the color. Because these feathers, some of them have the color in the feather. You take the feather away, no matter where you put it, it's always going to be red. Others of them, hummingbirds, a lot of these ducks, their feathers reflect. Indigo buntings, they're not really blue, their feathers just reflect the blue. And if the light doesn't come right, well then they don't look blue. Okay? Those hummingbirds, especially the ones down in Central South America, the sun has to hit them and then they shine. And if the sun doesn't hit it, it looks black. Okay? So those ones with reflective feathers, you have to be real careful about relying on color because it's not a reliable ID until the sun hits it just right. Seasonal color changes. What color is a goldfinch? Gold. Yeah, except in the winter when it's kind of an olive, greeny, drab color. The female's that color all year long, but the male changes. Okay? So lots of times people say, oh, I've only got female goldfinch. Well, you've got females and males, but just the males are in their winter plumage. Okay, so they're not gold anymore. So they change colors depending on what season it is. They can also kind of change colors. Their feathers wear. Bird molts at least once every year. Okay, goldfinches molt twice. Okay, but their feathers get worn. Well, think about it. They're flying through the brush, they're knocking them against things, and they get real raggedy by the end of the year, and then it's time for them to drop those feathers and grow nice, new, shiny, good ones. Okay? So that can change the way a bird's colors will look too, is if he's getting ready to molt, his feathers are real nasty looking. Okay? The differences in the eye of the beholder or light. It's like wildflowers. Is that a pink wildflower or is it a white wildflower? Well, it's spring beauty. Are they pink or are they white? Right? Well, it just depends. Sometimes I think they look white and sometimes I think they look pink. And you're with me and you say, oh no, that's not pink. That's, you know. So it's often the eye of the beholder on that. What color is it? Differences based on gender, young birds and females. Okay? Young birds, when they are big enough to fledge and learn how to fly and leave the nest, they very often look like the females. Sometimes juveniles have their own distinctive coloring and patterns. Sometimes they just look like their mothers. And then the next spring, the next time they molt, the males will get their nice breeding feathers. Okay? But those juveniles can be very confusing. Gulls, if you go to the beach and you're looking at gulls, they're the worst. Because it'll take gulls 4 years to get their adult plumage, lots of times, depending on the species of gull. And each year, they get new feathers, but they're a little different than they were the last year, but they don't look like the adults. Bald eagles, it takes a bald eagle 5 years to get that white head and tail. And in those 5 years, they're dark, they're mottled, they have a lot of white mottling in them. You say, what kind of bird is that? It can be very hard to tell a juvenile bald eagle from a golden eagle. So when we go out on the back 40 here, if you're just looking and they're up in the sky, it's real hard to tell a juvenile bald eagle from a golden eagle, even here at Bernheim. Okay? So the distance. At a distance, it's real hard to tell what color anything is. Okay, so colors, yeah, they can help sometimes. I'm going to use them if they're available, but I'm not going to hang my hat on it. Okay, behavior, oh, this is a good one. This is a good one to pay attention to and learn these little cues. Do they sit vertically or do they lean forward? Okay, a flycatcher is going to sit upright. A vireo may lean forward more. Okay, are they upside down? Some of them do. Nuthatches, right? They go down the side of the tree. So you see a bird going this way. It's maybe a nuthatch. It may be a creeper, a brown creeper, because they circle the trunk of a tree and they blend in with the bark. So you've got to see the motion of them practically. Movements, tail bobbing, fly catching. A phoebe, okay? A phoebe looks a lot like a wood pewee, except that a phoebe sits there and bobs its tail. So you always know it's a phoebe because it's sitting there bobbing its tail. Okay, so those behaviors are clues as to identification. They're feeding styles. Okay, woodpeckers, right? They're going to go into the tree and pull out those worms. So you can just, the behaviors, just you learn those by seeing them. Because a lot of times behaviors may or may not be in a field guide. Okay, so you learn these things by watching them. Flight patterns. Some birds fly straight across. Okay? Some of them fly up and down. A goldfish flies up and down. It says, "Perchicory, perchicory." So you may not see the color, but you see that flight pattern, that undulating flight pattern, and you hear the perchicory call, and you know it's a goldfish. Okay? Woodpeckers also have that undulating flight. A red-tailed hawk, you won't usually see it flying straight from point A to point B, but if he's hunting, he'll be circling. Okay? Cooper's hawk, on the other hand, in the sipiter, is in a hurry. You can go real straight like that. But when he flies, you can flap, flap, glide. Flap, flap, glide. Whereas a crow flaps all the time. You see those blackbirds in the sky. I did a blog post on that one time, how to tell the different black-looking birds apart. I always tell a crow because he flaps the whole time. Okay, size reference. This is where it gets hard. Okay, like I said, the field guide, no help. Oh, it's 20 inches. I don't know how big 20 inches when it's, half a mile in the air. I can't tell that. At Raptor Rehab, we get birds in and I'm holding them. Cooper's hawk. I'm holding it. I'm looking at it in the cage. I'm saying, it's really little. And in the trees at home, they look a lot bigger than they do when I've got them in my hands. So a size is a hard thing to do. I always like to take photos of different species next to each other, the gulls at the beach. If I get a picture of gulls, different species of gulls next to each other, I love them because that way I can really compare their size and see that the black-backed gull is enormous. Whereas if I take a photo of just one, well, it's just another gull, And photographers, field guides, amateurs, whatever, you always want to get as close to that bird as you can, right? So people can see all the details in it. But you can't tell size because a close picture of a wren makes it look as big as a gull in the photo. So photos are hard to rely on, okay? So you could say it looks bigger than or small. Is it bigger than a robin? Okay. Is it about the size of a crow? So take some bird that you're comfortable with how big it is and compare it to that one. And that at least gives you a start. So you don't worry about inches. How many inches is in a field guide? Wasted. I can't tell that. Doesn't mean anything. Okay? So it's in between something. You guess. Remember, you see a small bird. Oh, look at that. There's a little bird and it's flying and it's got those white bars. It's a baby northern mockingbird. No, it's not. It's a blue-gray gnatcatcher. Okay? Baby birds are not smaller than their parents. If it looks like something, but it's little, it's a different bird altogether. Because when birds are big enough to fledge, they are as big as they're ever going to get. Okay? Birds don't continue growing once they leave the nest. They'll change their color, they'll change their feathers, okay? But they don't get bigger. In fact, a bald eagle, when it fledges, weighs more than it will as an adult. Well, because think of it. He hasn't had to spend any energy flying, and his parents bringing food and stuff down his throat, okay? They're like teenagers. Okay, so you can't say, you know, or people see a screech owl and they, oh, look, it's a little baby corny owl. It's a little baby hoot owl. No, it's not. It's a screech owl. It's a different bird. Okay, so they're not baby birds. Baby something else. Okay, the habitat is a big thing. All right, because we'll find some kinds of birds in open fields. Why? Why do we find them in open fields? Why is that their habitat? Yeah, it's where they find food. Okay, so habitat simply means the place where the bird can find food and shelter appropriate to that species. Okay, so some birds will find sparrows out here in the meadow. Okay, in the forest, will we find sparrows in the forest? Because there's other kinds of sparrows that may find their food there. Warblers. We'll find some warblers out in the open fields. We'll find some warblers in the forest, okay? The edges. The edges are the very best place to go. The worst birding in the world is in the middle of the woods. Well, think about it. The birds are all way up there. If it's summer, there's the leaves, and the birds are behind the leaves, and I'm going to see very little in the deep woods. But if I stand out, you know some of the best birding places in the world? Parking lots. Really. The parking lot down here is wonderful. The parking lot at the Falls of the Ohio is wonderful. Around the parking lot at Creasy, you know, there, just right where the nature center is, parking lots are terrific. They're not habitat, but they're terrific places to see birds. Marshes and rivers, water, because we're going to get those waterfowl. We like those. Salt water versus fresh water, okay? So all of these are habitats because they're going to provide what the bird needs to survive, okay? We can also use range maps in a field guide. Again, when we had the question about the white pelicans, you know, what are they doing in central Illinois? Where is it going? Well, the field guide has a range map for each bird, saying this is where they breed, this may be where you would see them in migration, this is where they winter. Okay, but we're going to talk about the dangers of relying on those range maps as well. But it's a start. Okay, it's a start. Okay, so for example, in an open field area, we might find a hawk. It's going to be likely to be a red-tailed hawk because they like open areas where they can find lots of rodents. Okay, that's what they're going for, those small mammals. And they like them in the open fields because that way, you know, the grass is easier to hunt in. And that's what red-tailed hawks do. Our wren, we might have a little house wren there, or a field sparrow, or a blue-winged warbler. And yet when we go into the forest, we might find forest hawks. We won't find goshawks around here. This is somebody else's picture. But we might find Cooper's hawks. We might find broadwings. They're forest birds. Okay. We find some warblers. Black-throated green. Our sparrow, we might have a white-throated sparrow. And our wren might be a winter wren. Okay. Simply because we've changed habitat. So I see that wren shape. But I say, oh, we're in the woods now. It's not going to be a whatever. It's not going to be a house wren because we're in the forest now. Okay, so I can say, I can get a general family and then start eliminating the birds that it's not because of the habitat that I found it in. In a marsh, again, I'm going to have my raptor, maybe a northern harrier, maybe a red-shouldered hawk. Around here, we're more likely to see that red-shouldered hawk in a nice kind of swampy, marshy area. Our sparrow, swamp sparrow, of course. Our wren, we might have a marsh wren. And our warbler could be a common yellowthroat. We won't even get into bird names. Helton Evangelism. Field marks. Somebody was asking about field marks, okay? Now, here's the biggest secret in the world. All these field marks are in your field guide. In the front of the book that nobody ever reads. I would recommend that to your attention. Read the stuff in the front of the field guides. Because it tells you how to use the book. It gives you the color codes for those range maps. And I always have to flip back because I forget what the colors are. Okay? But it translates all that material that you're going to find later on when you're looking at an individual bird in the field guide. So look at those field marks. Why do you have, and basically this is anatomy, right? This is bird anatomy. Why do you need to know bird anatomy to help identify a bird?
Different colors and different areas.
Yeah, well, so you can say, I'm thinking, chipping sparrows. I saw some chipping sparrows out here last Saturday. They've got a black eye stripe. What's an eye stripe? Well, it's a little black line that goes back from their eye. That one's pretty obvious. They call this an eyebrow stripe. I just call them eyebrows. Okay? An eye ring. Some birds have eye rings, and that's the distinguishing mark for them, is that an ovenbird has a big eye ring. Okay? So you need to, again, spend a little time becoming familiar with the bird anatomy, because those field marks, those anatomy descriptions are what you're going to see in the description of a bird. If you're in something that doesn't have a good photograph, and you go and you read the words, and actually this is all historical as well, because back in the early days of birding, we didn't have field guides with pictures of birds. Roger Torrey Peterson was the first birder. He was an artist, he was a birder, and he was the first one to put together a field guide with pictures of the birds. If you go someplace to an old, book sale, and here's a field guide and it's all words, that's all they had, like in the 20s, until Roger Torrey Peterson did his first field guide that had illustrations, drawings of birds. Okay? So that's why these are very important, because that's how those first descriptions came, was because the field guides didn't have pictures. Before that, before they even had field guides, birders only could identify birds by collecting them, because in the 1800s, the early ornithologist Audubon, how did he identify a bird? Did he have binoculars? No. Not in the 1800s, he didn't. He shot birds. He shot lots of them. He said if he didn't kill 50 birds in a day, it was a wasted day. And he wouldn't just shoot one to see what it was. He'd shoot lots of them so he could compare them and make sure it was the same bird. A red-bellied woodpecker. You never see a red belly on that bird. Why is it called that? Because when it's dead and laying there like this, you can see the red belly. Okay? So that was back at the turn of the 20th century, when women started getting into this. Okay, until then, all the ornithologists were men, and they had to be good shots, and they had to be their own taxidermists, because that was the only way to preserve what they had. It was called collecting, and that's what they did. And then women got in it with their opera glasses, and as the optics started getting better, people started getting it, saying, why do we have to shoot? Let's just look at them. But the optics, binoculars made a big difference in the world of birding. Okay? But all of this, again, came from before there were field guides with pictures, before there were even field guides. You had to have a vocabulary that everybody knew. Okay, all right, so where and when are we going to look for birds? Number one thing, any place where there's food and shelter appropriate to that species. Okay? So lots of times, I don't have a specific bird I'm looking for. I just go out and see what I can find. Okay? I'm a serendipitous bird. Okay? And I'm always excited to see whatever I find. But sometimes you've got a specific kind of bird you're looking for. You've got to go where the bird is, right? That's an easy one. Backyard feeders. For folks who don't really want to get too involved in this too fast, put a couple of bird feeders in your backyard and just learn, start small. Start with the birds you can see in your own yard. And sometimes you get some surprises. You know, you think, oh, that's the same old, that's the same old house finch. And what was it, a couple winters ago, they said, oh, we're getting pine siskins in all our backyards. And I went and looked again, and darn it, half of my house finches weren't pine siskins. I just wasn't looking close enough. I assumed that that's what they were. So if you got a whole bunch of ducks out on the lake, you don't just say, oh, it's a bunch of mallards. Take your binoculars and look at each of them, because there are different kinds of ducks in that group down there on the lake. Okay, so look at each of them. Along the interstate highway, now this is dangerous to do when you're driving. I'm dangerous. I heard when I'm driving, especially those hawks. Oh, look at that! What is that? Or where the sandhill cranes are migrating. Oh, look at the cranes! You know, that's great stuff. So, but along the roads are a good place to see birds. I'm always counting hawks on the side of the anything. Edges of things. The edge of the woods, the edge of the marsh. Well, of course, if you go out in the middle of the marsh, you're going to sink down. So you must stay where it's dry and safe. But the edges are good. Any place where there's shallow water and marshes, you see all sorts of stuff. Some place where there's water. Okay? A lot more productive than the deep woods. Wildlife and nature reserves, parks. They're terrific. National Wildlife Refuges, NWRs. They're all over the place. They're not as well publicized as national parks, but they're also not as crowded as national parks. So I kind of prefer them to the big parks. Okay? But any place you've got a nature preserve, that's a good place. The best time in my mind is right now, late winter, early spring. Number one reason, there's no leaves on the trees. And I can actually see some birds, because once those leaves comes out, there they all are. You know, all the birds are behind the leaves. Okay? Traditionally, dawn and dusk. You don't have to go at dawn and dusk. You can go out during the day as well. But dawn is good because that's when the birds are singing. And if I can hear them, then I can look for them. Okay? Go out find yourself a birding boat. Hopefully somebody who knows more than you do. If you go out with the Beckham Bird Club, for example, we have got some people who just astound me with their expertise. And birders they are the best people in the world. You say, no, wait a minute, how do you know it's that? Why do you say so? And they'll pull out the book and they'll say, well, here's what you look for, and here is how it's different than this other one. Birders love to show off what they know. Look at me. Okay, so come to the Beckham Bird Club. We meet the second Tuesday of every month in Louisville at the Clifton Center. Okay, we have regular meetings and speakers. Rennes comes sometimes, and our speakers are bird-related, conservation-related, something like that. And then we have hikes all over with really, really good leaders, and it's on our website, beckhambirdclub.org. Okay, so you can see our dues are the cheapest dues of any organization you'll ever belong to. Okay, raptor programs. That's how I got started in the raptor business. Tammy from up at Hardy Lake would come to Falls of the Ohio, and she'd bring the birds, and I was sitting in the front row to watch those. And now I do it. That, honestly, Red, that was one of the thrills of my life. Was the first year I went down to the Land Between the Lakes for the Eagle weekend with Eileen. And there I was in front of 400 people talking about my birds. You know, and I said, I'm come full circle. It was great. Okay, bird songs. To me, this is really, really important. Because like I said, if you go and you just take your binoculars and you start looking at trees, all you're going to see is a bunch of branches, right? I have to have something to draw my eye to it. I have to have some motion, which may or may not work, because they move here. By the time I find that spot and get focused on it, they move someplace else, right? The birds do. But the song is what really draws my ear. And then that tells my eyes where to go. A lot of birds are heard and rarely seen. When I started studying bird calls, bird songs, and I learned the red-eyed vireo, I listened to it and I said, oh my God, I remember hearing this bird when I was a brownie at Winton Woods in Ohio, you know, when I was a brownie at day camp, I heard this bird in the woods. I never knew, I didn't know I was a brownie, I didn't care, right? But now I know that this is the bird that I heard all those years ago. Same thing for a wood thrush. You know, you're gonna hear them more often than you'll see them. Even meadowlarks, you'll hear them, but they're down in the grass and you're not as likely to see them as often, okay? So, and if you're listing, birders are into lists, okay? And if you hear a bird and you know that that's what it is, you can check it off your list just by having heard it. Okay, so that's good. In some of the CDs and stuff for bird songs, they talk about the bird's song versus the bird's call. Okay, so a robin has got what I used to call its rain song. In the spring, you know, it's got this melodious, wonderful song, and when I was a kid, I always thought, the robins say it's going to rain within 48 hours. Well, in the spring, that's usually a pretty safe guess, right? Pretty safe prediction. So I'd still call it the robin's rain song. But then a robin, when it's angry, has this chip. A lot of them have a chip. Okay? So some people are good enough to learn not only the songs, but the little chip call notes. I'm not that good. Some of them I can tell, but some of them I can't. Okay? So some places make a distinction about that. No big deal as far as I'm concerned. But sometimes you will hear that. The one CD's track that I have, I brought the case for it here because it's the best one. He has mnemonics to help you remember. Okay? Some birds say their own name. Chickadee-dee-dee-dee. Right? I love birds. Kitty-ear, killdeer say their own name. So I love the birds. Jay, Jay, Jay. You know, they calling out who they are. Those are good. Those are easy. Okay? But some of them, he said, my favorite is, maids, 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 put on your tea, kettle, kettle, kettle. And he's saying that's a song sparrow. Well, they don't say that, of course. But the cadence, they'll have 3 or 4 single notes followed by a trill. And if you listen to these birds, song sparrows all have distinctive songs. They don't say the same thing, but they all have that cadence to it, that timing. So you can hear that 1, 2, 3, trill, 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 trill. Okay? And you know that's a song sparrow, just by the cadence of it. White-throated, let's see. Here am I, an owl. Here am I. No, that's the red throat. Excuse me, that's the red Iberia. Here I am. Where are you? Here I am. Where are you? Okay? So you kind of make these up to help you remember. But one time it backfired on me. I heard a bird and I said, oh, I think it's saying, sweet, 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 little more sweet. What bird is that? We couldn't remember. We only remembered the mnemonic, not the bird that it belonged to. And how do you learn the bird songs? Get yourself a set of CDs. Okay? There are various quality CDs that you can get. But I recommend this Birding by Ear. Okay? It's from Peterson Field Guide, Birding by Ear. This one has, they have short ones that only have 1 CD or medium ones that have 2. This one is the 3 CD version. So it has about 83 birds on here. It'll take you a long time to learn 83 birds. I still don't know all of them. But this one has a narrator on it. And he talks about these things, and he'll group them. In the mimics, he'll put the northern mockingbird, the brown thrasher, and the catbird, because they can be easily confused. And he'll tell you, here's how you can tell the difference between these 3 similar sounding birds. And then he gets to orioles, and they play 4 or 5 different songs as a sample of an oriole, and you learn that, again, no 2 orioles sings the same. They all sing something different. Okay? So I put these in the car in the spring and listen to them when I'm driving. It's better than anything else, right? And that way I can learn. So every spring I put them in and I listen to them again just to refresh myself and to learn one more that I never had quite gotten straight. But the best way is actually to be out and see the bird singing its song. That's the best way, okay? Okay, but this is, I highly recommend this. The ones where they just say, red-eyed vireo, and they play the song, well, I'm daydreaming, I'm not paying attention to that, okay? Those don't help, but this is a really, really good one. And there's one like this for the Smoky Mountains, too. If you go to the Smokies, get there, because they do them by altitude. You know, which altitude you're likely to find the birds, okay? So that's a really good one.
What is this eastern?
Yeah, they've got one for eastern birds, and they've got one for western birds as well. So if I'm going out west, I might buy this to practice up on for the birds that I might find out there. Okay, so those CDs, yeah, well worth it. The thing to remember, like I said, is the birds don't listen to the CDs. Okay? The birds don't listen to CDs, and Orioles, song sparrows, they all have that. It's amazing how little birds, and even dialects in different parts of the country, they sing differently than they do elsewhere. So you may have a bird with a southern accent. You know, or they're just individuals, and they have their own individual little song that they sing. Okay? So you kind of learn the tone. Well, I can tell that's an Oriole because of the tone of the whistle. Okay? And I can't describe it any more than that. But I can have a wonderful conversation with an Oriole because I can just whistle back and he'll come over and, you know, and we just talk. I have no idea what we're saying. We have fine conversations. Okay, birding gear. Oh, wow. The first thing is binoculars. And binoculars can be a real pain in the neck, literally and otherwise, okay? Because the neck strap. Now, let me model for you, okay? I would recommend that you go and you get one of these stretchy things. It crosses over and it puts the weight of the binoculars on your shoulders, not on the nape of your neck. Okay, so I really, really recommend this kind of strap. The problem is I've had mine so long it's getting real stretchy and I keep having to try to shorten it. I'm going to have to get a new one pretty soon because the elastic's getting all stretched out. It also allows me that in the winter, right, I can zip my coat up and have it come out through the top of my coat. Of course, I could wear it on top of the coat, but lots of times I put these on first, okay? So that's the neck strap is the big thing. Is one of the big things. Let's talk about binoculars some more, okay? Everybody know how to use binoculars. Did you all bring binoculars today? Okay. Okay, the first thing I would say is, honey, I'm sorry, those aren't going to do you any good. Okay? You think, oh, they're little, they're lightweight, it's wonderful, but you can't see anything. Come here, let me give you an experiment. We can do this. Binoculars. Make binoculars with your hands. And make them small. Put your thumb and your fingers together. Now, how much can you see through there? Can you see the walls?
No.
Okay. You have to move your head to see. You can't see a lot through these binoculars, can you? Because you have a limited field of vision. Okay. Make your holes bigger. Can you see more? Okay. This is the thing with binoculars. Binoculars have two numbers on them. Okay. They'll have one number, 7, 8, 10, times 25, 35, 40, 50. Okay. The first number is your magnification. And I always thought, bigger is better. Not necessarily. Okay. Because when you get those bigger magnifications, they're narrowing your field of vision. And they're also making the binoculars a lot heavier. I brought a pair of 10s back there, and you know, you walk around with them all day, and you're going to get really tired, your neck's going to get really sore from carrying them. And, you know, where's that bird? Well, I can't, you know, that's the hard part, is finding the bird. Somebody finds it. Where? Well, it's in this sycamore tree, and it's the third branch on the left. It's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. There's all kinds of ways that birders use to try to point out where a bird is. But the problem is you've got to find that tree. You've got to find that branch. Here's the trick. The first lesson in binoculars, find what you want to look for. Okay, I want to look at that light. Put your eyeball on it, bring the binoculars to your head, to your face. Okay, you don't take the binoculars and try to go like this, because I guarantee you're not going to find it, and by the time you do, the bird is long gone. Okay, so find what you want to focus on, put your eyeball on there and keep it there. Okay, then bring the binoculars to your face. The second hard thing is trying to remember, do I need to focus closer or focus farther away? And is that left or right on my little focus knob? Because I do that, again, it's hard to judge the distances. And while I'm trying to figure out where the focus is, the bird's long gone. Okay, so binoculars are your friend and your enemy all at the same time. Okay. But unless you've got, I've got some friends that I swear have, telescopic contact lenses or eyeballs. They see more things without binoculars than I see. Okay. Another thing about binoculars, take a little time and get some eyeglasses cleaner. Clean your binoculars. You'll be amazed the amount of difference it'll make. Because it's the amount of light that comes in that does it. Most of the good birders that I know don't use any magnification higher than an 8. Because when you get up into the 10s or maybe the 12s, your field of vision is so narrow that you can't see without doing this all the time. And then you miss the bird. So an 8x40 and 8x42 is a good kind of binocular to have for all-purpose birding. Now, if you've got something that's really farther away, you're probably wanting a spotting scope, which is a telescope on a tripod. I only use my spotting scope in the winter when I'm doing ducks on a lake or on the river, where they're all going to stay put mostly, and I'm going to stay put mostly. Some people will walk around with that darn thing on their back all the time. I'm not willing to do that. Okay? How much money are you going to spend on this? Because this is going to be your most expensive thing about birding. By and large, birding is not an expensive hobby to do. You can get a decent pair of 8x40, 8x42s at Bass Pro for between $100 and $200. Okay? And they will do you just fine. You can go and you can spend $2,000 or $3,000 on binoculars. You can spend $8,000 or $10,000 on a spotting scope. Okay? I ain't going to do that. I don't have that kind of money. And I don't use it often enough. I like to hang around with people who have done it, though. That's the next best option, is find a boating buddy who's got that Swarovski, that really good $8,000 scope, and hang around with him. It works. I've got some friends in the birding club who will take their scope and they can focus on a bird in a tree. I can't do that. Okay, so that's why I say my scope usage is limited to ducks on water, basically, because I can find them a little easier. I can't find a little bird in a tree with a spotting scope. Forget that. Not me. But fortunately, not everybody has those limitations.
What about that side versus the wired ones?
It's just how much do you want to carry around with you? Okay, because all of them bend in the middle, and you want to bend them like this till the two circles merge, and you're only looking through one. Because if you try to look through two circles, you go cross-eyed, right?
Right. Well, I have some older ones that have a wire, so it's like you're seeing a bigger space, but they're smaller at the front.
Yeah, I don't. You'd have to look those up. There's lots of places online where you can review different kinds of scopes and binoculars and things. There's a lot of good literature
Now,
out
doesn't
there.
that give you a bigger scope?
You have to try it.
I mean, it does.
Yeah, but it really has to do with how big the hole is in front. Because it's how much light is it going to let in. But if you've got one that's big like that, can you hold it up? That's another thing with the 10s. They're heavy, and after a while, and also, you don't want to hold them like this, because your arms will get real tired. You want to put your elbows down and kind of brace them against your chest so that you don't do like this. Okay? But it takes time. I am still learning how to use the binoculars. Okay? And the little ones that we have, they're for my grandson. So he's 2.5 and he gets the binoculars and he looks through the wrong end, but we're starting with him. Okay? He's going to learn. else? Spotting scope, we talked about those. Those can get very expensive. A big thing is, where is the viewer? Some of them have a straight barrel, some of them have the viewer that it curves up. Mine is straight, and now I kind of wish I had one that, if I can get Dick to break my old one so I get a new one, you know, then I'll get one that curves up. Because if I'm looking up at something, you know, and it's a straight one, you got to get it real tall, and you got to get down on your knees to look way up at the top of something. Whereas if I had a curved viewer, I wouldn't have to do that. Okay, camera. Where's my camera? You don't have to have a camera to do birding. I found that, one, I wanted to prove to myself and everybody else that I did see this bird. And I also find it handy that if I've got a bird that I can get a picture of, but I don't know what it is, I'll send the picture to one of my experts, and then he can tell me what it is. I had a bird in the top of a tree one time, and I don't know what that is. The colors are funny. I can't tell. So I sent it to Brainerd Ponnerball, who is the top birder in the state. He's the recognized expert in the state. And he said, oh, that's a meadowlark. I said, that looks like a meadowlark. He said, well, it's probably a young one and the light was funny. But he knew enough other things that he could tell me it was a meadowlark. Or last winter I thought I saw, oh look, it's the great rare Siberian something goose. I thought I discovered a new goose. And they said, are you sure it's not a hybrid? You know, because the wild geese and the domestic geese interbreed, and you get some really strange looking ducks and geese like that. And it was a hybrid. But I got real excited for a while, because this winter we had all sorts of unusual birds here in the Ohio Valley. And I thought I discovered one, but I didn't. It was just a mine. Okay, so a camera, if you're going to get a camera, this one is a Panasonic Lumix, and it doesn't weigh hardly anything. You can go for the big Nikons and Canons and all of that and get good pictures, that's true, but I like these because they don't weigh much, and this newest version has a 60x zoom on it, so that's kind of fun, okay? But the pictures, when we get into the picture part of this, these are all my pictures, so I'm proud. I take lots of pictures, let's say that. I take lots of pictures, and I throw away the ones that aren't any good, and I only show people the good ones. Okay, field guides. Let's go back to field guides. There are lots and lots of field guides, okay? If you're a birder, you're a big-time birder, you gather your information, you write a field guide. Peterson is one of the first ones, because, you know, Roger Tory Peterson was the guy who started field guides with pictures in them, which we can't imagine any other kind. Okay? So, Roger Tory Peterson, I always say you're safe going with Peterson. Now, he's been dead for a number of years, but he was the first guy, so all of his are good. The field guides will have, oh, look at that, there's that road's that silhouette picture that we saw. Okay, you can come back and look at these when we take a break. There's all the field guides and stuff in the middle of the field marks. Then they'll have different pictures of the male, the female, the juvenile, sometimes in flight. Okay? Not a lot of detail, just a short paragraph describing them. Okay? And that's the problem with it's a field guide, it's not a field encyclopedia. Okay? But it's a good start. You've got to have a field guide. Okay? So the trick is, am I going to get one of these that has lots of information in it, but I can't really fit it in my jeans pocket? Okay? Although some people had, you find some people that they're all bent. Okay? You can get a bigger one that you keep in the car, you keep in the hotel. Okay? Because you can't fit it in your pocket. When you go on vacation, lots of times you can find these real cool little fold-out things for the birds of that area. I like those. This is not a field guide, but some states have birding trails. You can go online. You go in Florida, Alabama, Texas, Carolina. Go online and look for their birding trail and see if they have one. Because this will tell you where to go birding when you're on vacation. Good stuff. Okay, so you can look at all of those during the break. Did we take a break here? Wake up. Don't quit on me now. Okay, field guides. Yep, you have to have a field guide. it looks like it might rain, put a plastic bag in your fanny pack or your pocket to cover up your binoculars so they don't get wet, or your camera. I've got a fanny pack with a little place for my water bottle, okay, and I like that a lot. My vest has got lots of pockets, which is great, but it's got a lot of pockets, which is a real nuisance sometimes, because I can't figure out which pocket I put something in. Okay? But something to carry things in is always useful. Now, where's the other one? Let's go back to field guides, because I thought I had added this on here, and apparently I didn't. One of the new things in birding are apps. Oh yeah, I fought getting one of these smartphones for a long time. And then I got one and I said, oh God, how did I? My favorite one is the Audubon birds. Okay, I like this one the best. I've got another one that is, where is it? I don't use it. I paid for it and I don't use it because I don't like it as well. I can't even find it now. But the Audubon one, the Audubon one is cool. If you want to log online the birds that you've seen with eBirds, this will do it. You're out there in the field, you say, oh, I saw this, and it writes it down for you. If you want to just search for a bird, I can go in here and, oh yeah, I want to search for towhees. And I type in towhee, and it says, here's an Albert's towhee, an Arcadian, an alder flycatcher. Term, what's it doing there? Okay, but I go through here, and some of these birds that thinks are towhees. Oh, I didn't search, it was just alphabetical. T-O-W-H-E-E. Yeah, okay, and then it finds, and here's the eastern towhee. And so I bring it up and I see pictures of it, and I can go look at different, oh, it's the male, it's the female, it's the juvenile, so it's got all the pictures. I can look at the range of it. Where should I think it's this, but by golly, it shouldn't be here right now. And remember, the big thing about field guides is the birds don't read them, okay? So just because the field guide says, you're not in a place where you should see this bird, doesn't mean that it may not be here. Okay, there's always hope. That's the joy of birding. You never know what you're going to find. Okay, I can come here and I can listen to its voice. Come on. Oh, I turned the speaker off. You got to turn the speaker on. Sing again. Okay, now, University of Minnesota is supposed to be working on an app that you can say, okay, bird, sing your song, and send it to Minnesota, and they'll tell you what bird it is. I am waiting with bated breath for that. Okay. I need a description. It'll give me a more wordy description of it. But here's the best thing is, what birds are similar? What might I be mistaking this for? Okay, well, it might be a robin, it might be a spotted towhee, it might be an orchard oriole, you know, and then I can go and look at those and see what's their range. Well, that spotted towhee, that's a really western bird. It's not that, okay? So I found these to be very good, but what's the drawback on this? You all know it.
It's got to be within range.
Batteries. Okay, because this one is downloaded on my, so I don't have to have a signal to any place, okay? I can be out in the wilderness and I can still use this as long as I'm not trying to, you know, log it on the eBirds. I can still just look at this. An advantage is if oh God, there's that little bird up there and I want to get it out here so I can get a picture of it. Now there's ethics to using calls to bring a bird out, okay? You don't want to do it too much. You'll drive the little birds crazy. But I have had them come, you know, there was a little bunting or something. And I just wanted to see if it would work, so I played the bunting song, and he came out, and he flew around my head, and he said, well, you're nothing, and he went off. But it worked. It brought the bird out where I could see it. Of course, it was so busy flying around, I still didn't get a picture of it. But the real danger is batteries. You know, if you're going to use your phone app in the field, be sure you got a good charge on it. The camera, always be sure you got a spare battery in your pocket. Right? So that's what happens when we get into technology and birding. We've got to make sure we got batteries. Okay? Proper clothes, hat, shoes, bug spray, sunblock, sweater, gloves, whatever the weather is going to bring you, you got to be ready for it because burglars are tough. You know, we don't care if it's cold and it's raining and all that, we go anyway. Okay? And water. You don't want to get out there and get all dehydrated. All right? So you want to be prepared for whatever is happening in your day. Oh, we already talked about field guides. The birds don't read them. The quality of the book versus the size of it. That big Sibley back there, I'm not going to care. That's my hotel book. That's my car book, where I might look for something, but I'm not going to carry it around. It's too big. Okay. Peterson, Sibley, Audubon are all good ones. Phone apps, there we go. That's where those were. But you want to get outside. The best way to learn birding is to get out there and do it. Okay? So let's take a break and go to the bathroom, get a drink, get a snack if you want to, and then we'll decide how are we doing on